Assalamu alaikum. I welcome you all to another lecture on electrical machines. And so far, we have developed an equivalent circuit of an induction motor where the rotor and the stator are joined together such that they operate on the same frequency. However, to compensate the effects of this slip on the rotor circuit, we have included the resistance in the rotor circuit as a function of the slip S. So in today's class, we will develop the torque speed characteristics of an induction motor, not only the electrical derivation of the torque speed characteristics, but we shall also see the physical standpoint of an induction motor torque generation and its characteristics with respect to the speed. So let us begin with today's class. Now, before we begin with the torque speed characteristics of an induction motor, let's have a quick recap and let's have a quick refresher of the induced torque in a given AC machine. So suppose that we have a stator. In this stator, we have the magnetic field in this particular direction. Let us say that this is the magnetic field due to the stator winding, this BS. Here we have the stator, and in the stator we have the winding arrangement such that we have a magnetic field which is freezed at this particular moment of time, and these lines are showing the direction of the magnetic field in the stator, which is this BS. Now suppose that we have a rotor which has the current flowing into the rotor bar from this cross side, and it is coming out of the page from this dot end. Suppose that this is the rotor and this is the center point on which the this is the center axis, which is used as a reference to see how this particular two conductor rotor circuit will behave inside a rotating magnetic field. In this simple machine, we need to see how much torque is induced in these particular rotor conductors. So for that, we do know that because these conductors are placed inside a rotating magnetic field, so there will be a force which will act on these two conductors, that is given as F is equal to I L into B, which is equal to I L BS sine alpha, where this is the alpha. Now let us say that this one is the conductor number 1. So the radius, this distance is R1, and this is conductor number 2, and therefore this is R2. And now we will have to see the force which is acting on this conductor number 1 and the force which is acting on this particular conductor number 2. So the force which is induced on this conductor number 1 can be established by using the left hand rule. It says that this BS, which is the direction of the field of the stator, can be represented by the index finger. The current which is flowing in these conductors, I, is given by the middle finger, and thereafter the thumb will tell us the direction of the force on this particular conductor. So if we apply this thing, then we do know that this index finger, it is pointing on the top side, while the current is coming out of the conductor from this dot end. Therefore, the force is counterclockwise in this particular direction. This is the force F1 for this first conductor. Similarly, for the second conductor, since this cross shows that the current is going into the page, the force which is exerted on this second conductor is as shown here. So based on this particular force, the torque which is induced in each of these two conductors, that is equal to the force applied times the perpendicular distance. This perpendicular distance is R1 for the first conductor and R2 for the second conductor. So this torque is equal to R IL BS sine alpha, and this is, by the way, for this first particular conductor. For the second conductor, this T2 is equal to R2 IL BS sine alpha. Now, because owing to the symmetry of the rotor circuit, we assume that the rotor is exactly symmetrical. Then this R1 is equal to R2 is equal to R. So the combined torque on this rotor loop is equal to the sum of the torque which is induced on this conductor number 1 and this conductor number 2, and that is equal to 2 times R IL BS sine alpha. Let us analyze this particular expression further to develop the induced torque as a function of the magnetic field. Now suppose that we have this stator assembly here, and we have these two conductors. This is the center point. The current is moving into the connector here, and it is coming out of this connector in this particular coil. So here we have, this is the BS, which is the magnetic field due to the applied voltage on the stator winding. At 90 degree to this conductor current, we have this BR, which is the magnetic field in the rotor circuit. This angle is 90 degree. So the vector sum of this BR and this BS will give us the net magnetic field present inside the given machine. So this is somewhere here. Let us say this is B net, where this B net is the sum of both the magnetic fields which are present in the given machine. So remember that we have two magnetic fields in a given machine. The first one is the stator magnetic field, which is generated because of the application of the voltage on the stator circuit, and because the stator circuit is 120 degree mechanically apart, therefore a rotating magnetic field will be developed inside the machine, which is shown as BS. Whereas because we have a conductor loop inside the rotor circuit, there is a current which is flowing in the rotor, and therefore there will be a field, magnetic field, because of the rotor current as well, and this magnetic field is shown by this BR. So the net magnetic field inside a machine is a sum of the stator magnetic field and the rotor magnetic field, and we have shown it with this quantity which is expressed as B net. Now if you see here that this BR, which is the magnetic field produced because of the current flowing in the rotor, the magnitude of the magnetizing intensity of this BR, which is said as this HR, is also proportional to the amount of current flowing in the rotor, and therefore we can say that this HR is equal to C times I, and therefore we can say that this HR is proportional to the current I, which can be expressed as HR is equal to C into I, where C is the constant of proportionality, right? So this is the first thing. If we look onto this particular diagram, so because this HR and BR, they are dependent on the amount of current, therefore we can also write this BR is HR. So the angle between this HR and this BS, this angle, let us say this is gamma, and here based on this particular thing, that let us say this is the reference point, so we have this particular angle equals to alpha. So based on the trigonometric rules, we can say that this gamma is equal to 180 degree minus this alpha, right? So this gamma, which is the angle between the stator magnetic field and the rotor magnetic field, is equal to 180 degree minus this alpha. Based on this particular aspect, sine alpha or sine gamma is equal to sine 180 degree minus this alpha. And if we combine these two observations, this first one, which is here, and the second one, if we combine these two together, then we can say that the torque induced is equal to K HR into BS, KHR BS into sine alpha, where this K depends on the construction of the machine, and this can be expressed as KHR with the cross product of the stator magnetic field BS. Now because we do know that the magnetic field intensity and the density, they are both related with BR is equal to mu into HR. So the torque induced is equal to K times BR into BS, where this K is equal to K by mu, which is so the net magnetic field B net, which is shown here, it is actually the sum of the BS and BR the vector sum of the BS and this BR. So this one can be reached either by putting this BS at the end of this BR, or by putting this BR at the end of this BS. At both ways you will reach this particular B net here. So the net magnetic field B net is equal to BR and the is equal to BR plus the magnetic field due to the stator winding. So using this expression, this Bs is equal to B net minus Br. So the torque induced, if I plug this one back here, then this torque induced is equal to K into Br into B net minus this Br. So that is equal to K Br into B net minus K Br into this Br. And we also know that this is equal to 0 because the cross product of any vector with itself is 0. So with this term gone from the equation, this torque induced is equal to K into Br into B net, or we can say that that is equal to K Br B net sine delta, where delta is the angle between the Br and this B net, and therefore we can say that this particular line, this angle is known as the delta, right? It is known as delta. Now that we have understood how the induced torque in a machine is dependent on the magnetic field inside the rotor circuit and the angle between the rotor magnetic field and the net magnetic field present inside the motor, we are now much sane to understand how the torque in an induction motor varies with the applied load on the machine, so that we can understand how the torque speed characteristics of an induction motor varies. So for this, let us revert back to the topic, which is the induced torque in an induction motor. Now suppose that we have a stator here. So suppose that we have, this is the center point, and here we have the Bs, which is the stator magnetic field, and we assume that there is no mechanical load on the machine, and therefore the motor is already running very close to the synchronous speed, right? Now because the motor is running very close to the synchronous speed, therefore the relative difference between the rotor velocity and the stator magnetic field velocity is very low, meaning that there is very less amount of current which is flowing into the rotor circuit, right? Remember that we have earlier studied here that the amount of current which flows into the rotor circuit is dependent on this R2 over S, and slip is what? Slip is the difference between the synchronous speed and the mechanical speed of the rotor. Now if the motor is operating at no load, this means that the motor is actually operating at a speed which is very close to the synchronous speed, and therefore this S is very low, or it is close to 0. Now with this S close to 0, this means that this R2 over S contributes a lot and it becomes high, and consequently at no load the slip is low, and hence R2 over S has a dominant part. Consequently this I2 is low, according to the equivalent circuit that we studied in the last lecture. And with this I2 very low, this Br shall have a smaller magnitude compared to the magnitude of the rotor magnetic field when the motor is under loading condition, under loaded condition. So because this BR is in this direction, so therefore right in at 90 degree with this thing, right at 90 degree with this thing, we have this IR here, right? And because we have a very low amount of current flowing here, let me first draw the equivalent circuit here as well. Here we have this is R2 over S, this is JX2, this is I2, and here we have this I1, and here we have this this is IM. So this is JX1, this is JXM, and here we have the RC, and here we are applying the per phase the phase voltage here. Now we said that initially the motor is under no load condition. If the motor is under no load condition, therefore it is operating very close to the synchronous speed of the machine. With that in mind, the slip is low and therefore this R2 over S is high. So consequently this I2 is low. Now with this I2 low, not only this I2 is low, but we have also seen that the frequency of the rotor FR is also dependent on the slip, right? So if the slip is low, not only this R2 over S is high, but we have the rotor frequency is very low. So with this rotor frequency low, the impact of this inductive part, which is 2 pi FL, since this F is low, so therefore this contributes very little into the rotor circuit, and therefore this IR and consequently the voltage which is induced in the rotor, they are quite close to each other, near to the unity power factor. Remember that the angle between this IR and this ER, this is theta R, it defines the power factor of the rotor circuit, right? So we do not have any load, so the frequency is low, so this JX2 has a very minimum role in the circuit. So therefore we have this EA, we have this IR, and consequently we have this BR here. Now let me draw it with this solid line here, so that we can differentiate with the dotted line which corresponds the IR or the rotor current here. Now the net magnetic field here is the net magnetic field which is present in this given circuit is equal to, is somewhere here. It is somewhere here. It is somewhere here. Then this is the B net here, right? The net magnetic field under these particular circumstances is that we have this I1 which is flowing here. Since this I2 is very low, so therefore majority of the current will flow through this magnetizing branch IM, and therefore we can say that the net magnetic field B net, it is produced by this current which is actually exciting the motor with respect to the magnetic field in the circuit. So it is B net is actually produced by the magnetizing branch current IM, right? So the magnetizing branch current under this particular circumstances, this IM is proportional to this E1. And what is this E1? E1 is the voltage between these 2 points. This is E1, right? So IM is proportional to this E1. If this E1 is constant, then this IM is constant, and therefore the B net is constant. However, in an actual machine, if we have a variation in the load, then we do have the variation in this I1 and the JX1. However, these two have a very they do not dominate in the actual motor, and therefore the net magnetic field inside a motor more or less remains constant irrespective of the loading condition. Now there is one more thing. If we look onto this particular point, that this IM is the current which is supplying for this B net, and therefore even at no load, the current of the machine is significant, right? And this is the reason that induction motors have very large no load current compared to the other type of machines that we have studied. So usually the no load current of an induction motor is 30 to 60% of the full load current. And we have already seen that the torque which is induced in the motor is equal to K times BR into B net, which is K times BR B net into sine delta. And by the way, we have also seen that this delta is the angle between this BR and this B net, right? So in here, this BR and B net, this is the delta here. Now the point here is that if now we apply a substantial load onto the motor, of course within its capacity, then there will be some shift in the BR, there will be some shift in the current. We need to see that thing, and consequently there will be a change in the value of the angle between the net magnetic field and the rotor magnetic field. So let us see how it happens here. Now suppose that we put some mechanical load onto the motor. To fulfill that thing, the motor will slow down, right? As the motor will slow down, the value of slip will become high. As the value of slip become high, this R2 over S will become low, and consequently we have a rise in the I2, which is shown in this particular circuit. As this I2 will increase, what will happen? There will be an additional amount of current flowing into the rotor circuit. That additional current will not only strengthen the magnetic field present or produced in the rotor circuit, but there will be a change and there will be an increase in the frequency of the rotor circuit as well, because this Fr is equal to S times Fse. Consequently, what happens is that this Jx2 will have a dominant role in defining the rotor power factor angle. As a result, this current will lag further behind the rotor induced voltage, and consequently this BR will also shift, because this BR comes at exactly at 90 degree with the current. So if this is the current of the rotor circuit, then at exactly at 90 degree we have the rotor magnetic field. So if the current is here, we have the rotor magnetic field here. If the current is here, then we have the rotor magnetic field here. And if the current is here, we have the rotor magnetic field here. So this rotor magnetic field will also shift because of the load which is imposed on the induction motor, and consequently we have this BR is also changing. Also we have this sine delta change. Now the point here is that what effect will dominate the machine. If we have this effect, BR is dominating the machine, then the overall torque which is induced in the motor will increase. If this sine delta is increasing, then we have the net torque which is produced in the machine, it will decrease. Now to summarize this thing and to understand it further, let us draw this type of a diagram again, and let us understand how the load on the induction motor actually varies the induced torque in a given machine. So let me again draw the stator circuit here. Now this stator circuit, in this stator circuit, let us say that this is the BS, which is the stator magnetic field, and here we have this is the let us say this is the this is the ER, which is the rotor induced voltage. Now what I am saying here is, let me again draw the equivalent circuit here. This is R2 over S, this is JX2, which is equal to 2 pi F into L. This is JX1, this is R1, this is V5, this is RC, this is JXM. Now what I am saying is that suppose the motor is loaded with some mechanical load on the shaft. Now as we apply the load on the shaft, what will happen? It will decelerate, or it will slow down the rotor, rotor speed. Now as the rotor speed will increase, you see here, we apply a mechanical load here. With this thing, the speed actually decreases. When the speed is decreases, then this slip will increase, right? Because slip is the difference between the rotating magnetic field and the actual speed of the motor, which is this omega m. So the slip will increase. Now as the slip will increase, this R2 over S will decrease. Sorry, it will decrease. Right. When this R2 over S will decrease, then the current I2 will increase. Also we have the frequency of the rotor will also increase. Right. Because this Fr is equal to S time Fse. Now slip is increased, so the rotor frequency is also increased. So what will happen? With the effect of this I2, with the increase in the I2, we have this Br, it will also increase, right? So now the important point is, since the magnetic field which is present or which is produced in the rotor circuit, it depends on the amount of current which is flowing in the rotor circuit. Now that the current has increased, so therefore the magnetic field intensity inside or produced because of the rotor circuit will also increase. But there is another catch here. We have the increment in the frequency as well. So when the frequency of the rotor increases, then this JX2, it will also increase, right? Or the impedance because of this particular part, this X2, this will also increase. When this will increase, then the power factor of the rotor circuit, will also decrease. So in the nutshell, if I may say that if this is this ER, and here we have the current, which is this IR, it is just here. So right at this 90 degree, if this is the 90 degree, here we have this BR. So this is BS and this is the BR here, right? And somewhere here on this ER, we have the net magnetic field, which is this here, which is this B net here, right? So here we have this particular kind of a diagram. So pardon me because of a little bit of inaccuracy in this thing, but the concept is exactly the same, that we have this B net which is dependent on this ER, and this IR and this BR, they both have this BR has actually increased, and because of that we have the shift in IR is because of the okay. So this IR, the shift in IR is in the amplitude, right? And we also have a power factor angle which is between this ER and this IR, and we call this theta R. And theta R is the power factor of the rotor circuit here, right? So this is the power factor of the rotor circuit. Also we have this angle between the B net and this BR, that is known as the delta. So we can see from this particular discussion that increase in the BR increases the B net, right? However, the increase in delta which is here, now the delta is increased compared to this particular circuit where the delta is very low. So increase in delta will decrease the B net, right? So we have two things simultaneously happening inside the magnetic domain of an induction motor. Whether or not this effect is useful for the machine, it depends entirely on what effect dominates the other effect. So if the first effect, which is this one, if this effect is larger than the effect of delta on this B net, then the overall induced torque will increase, and the motor then will be able to cater for the load which is applied on the shaft, right? If this thing dominates this thing, then it certainly means that the motor is no longer able to withstand with the mechanical load which is applied on the particular machine. So we say that for the time being, this effect, which is effect number 1, and this is effect number 2. So if number 1 is greater than number 2, then the motor will work with the load which is applied on it. If we further increase this load on the machine, then we may say that this, for example, that this effect number 2 is greater than this effect number 1. So the motor induced torque will reduce and the motor will stop, right? So this particular point where the increase in the load is, the motor is able to withstand with the increased load, that only happens unless we have reached the pull-out torque or the maximum torque of a given machine. Now, based on these few observations, we have concluded that the induced torque in a machine is equal to KBR B net sin delta. We have also seen that this BR is proportional to the amount of the rotor current IR, as we have discussed here, and this IR again is dependent on the value of the slip here, right? So it is proportional to the slip, and therefore if we plot this BR, which is this magnetic field of the rotor, or the IR as a function of the speed Nm, which is the motor speed, then this type of a plot emerges, where this point is the synchronous speed, and at this synchronous speed the slip is equal to 0, and here we have the slip equal to 1, because slip is the difference between the synchronous speed and the rotor speed. So at this start, you can see here we have motor speed is not equal to motor speed is 0, and therefore slip is equal to 1. Since the slip is equal to 1, so we have this type of a characteristics. This is for this BR. Owing to this B net here, this B net is depending on the value of the E1, and we have also seen that this E1 is the voltage across this particular branch, and we have seen that the increment in the load do not have much variation because of this R1 and JX1, and therefore we can say that the net magnetic field inside the machine stays constant, and therefore we can plot this as a function of the speed Nm, and here we have the B net here, and because we said that this is constant, so it's actually a constant line. The last thing is this sin delta, right? It is the sine delta. Now this sine delta is the angle, sine delta is the angle between the, sine delta is the angle between the rotor magnetic field BR and the net magnetic field which is present in the motor. Now there is, instead of plotting it only with respect to the sine delta, there is an option or there is a mathematical procedure through which we can actually convert this sine delta in terms of the rotor power factor angle, because rotor power factor angle is a little bit more convenient and it makes more sense, because ultimately the effect of load on the machine is impacting on the rotor power factor, as we have just seen here, right? So we can see that this delta is equal to, we know that this delta is equal to theta r plus 90 degree, because here we have this thing, this is exactly at 90 degree, and here we have this theta r. So the delta, which is this angle, is equal to theta r plus 90 degree. So let me first of all do a little bit of trick with this sine delta here. So this sine delta, this delta is equal to theta r plus 90 degree, and for this overall arrangement, this sine delta becomes equal to sine theta r plus 90 degree, right? And that is equal to cosine theta r, right? And this cosine theta r is the power factor of the rotor circuit. So this theta r is equal to tan inverse of xr over rr, which is equal to tan inverse of xr over r2 times this s, right? Because this is rr is nothing but r2 over s. So this theta r, which is tan inverse s into xr over r2, is the power factor angle of the rotor. So the rotor power factor angle PFR is equal to cosine theta r, and that is equal to cosine into tan inverse of xxr over this r, right? And if I plot it as a function of the speed, because now the slip is there, then this particular plot becomes something like this one. Here we have this Nm. This is the cosine theta r, or which is the power factor of the rotor circuit, and it is something like this one, like this. That is equal to, let us see. Now these three things, where this one is taken, is shown in the form of the rotor power factor angle. Now these three, if we graphically multiply them together, it provides us the induced torque in a given induction motor. Now remember that we have a graphical multiplication of these three things, because this k is actually a constant. Owing to this particular constant, we can straight away multiply these three together to generate the torque speed characteristics of a machine. Because for all these three graphs, the x-axis is exactly the same, which is the mechanical speed of the rotor. So if we draw it here somewhere, then we have this thing is, sorry, we have a little bit of mistake. This thing do not start from here, rather it starts from somewhere here. It starts from somewhere here. So this is not 0. So we have this point multiplying with this particular point will start somewhere from here, and something like this one is the torque speed characteristics of the induction motor. This is the torque induced, and this is the mechanical speed of the motor Nm. Now if you see here that we have Nm equal to 0 somewhere here, and this particular point we have the synchronous speed and synchronous, and at this synchronous speed we have slip is equal to 0 and the omega r is equal to the omega s at this synchronous time. This on this particular side here we have slip equals to 1 and the rotor speed is equal to 0, and therefore we can say that this is the starting torque of the machine. This is the starting torque of the induction machine. And also we have a peak here which is somewhere here. This is known as the pull out torque of the induction motor, and this is the maximum torque that a given induction motor can supply to a load. Now if we look onto this particular torque speed characteristics of an induction motor, then we can say that we have three regions in the torque speed characteristics, right? We have roughly 3 regions in the torque speed characteristics. So let us say that this region is known as the region number 1. This is region number 2, and this one is the region number 3. Now these 3 regions are based on the value of this slip. So you can see that this first region, this region number 1, it has a low slip value, and in this particular region the motor slip increases linearly with the applied load, and the rotor mechanical speed decreases linearly with the load. So you see here that in this linear region, let us write down the attributes here. So for region number 1, it is a low slip region, right? Slip is very low. It is 0 at the end of this region. This is the end of this region. This one is the region number 1. Let me redraw it here. This is region number 1, right? This is region number 1. So here we have a low slip here. So if we apply the load on the motor will certainly decelerate, as we have seen. And in this particular region, this applied load has a linear relation with the slip here, right? So the motor slip increases linearly with the increase in load. Also, the motor speed decreases linearly with the load. And this region number 1 is known as a stable region. It is known as a stable region of an induction motor. This region number 2, is actually a region of moderate slip value. So we have an intermediate values of the slip. Neither we can say that the slip is very high, nor we can say that the slip is very low. This particular region is a region where the peak torque of the machine is available, which is here somewhere, right? So this is the peak torque or the pull out torque region. So the motor current or the rotor current, it no longer increases rapidly, and in this particular region the power factor of the rotor actually drops, right? The third region is the region where we have, region number 3 is a region where we have high slip. Here we have the induced torque, it actually decreases with the load, and therefore this is an unstable region of the operation of the given motor. Notice that if we have a motor and it is standstill and we do not apply any load on the motor, then the motor starts at this particular point and then it travels all the way to this particular curve and it settles down here where it barely fulfills the rotational losses of a machine, and it rotates at a constant speed. Now the starting torque is usually, if this is the full load torque, if this particular point, if this is the full load torque, then this starting torque is approximately 200% of the full load torque, and this pull out torque is usually between 500 to 600% of the full load torque. So pardon my diagram here, but you get the concept here, right? That we have the pull out torque, which is something around 500 to 600% of the full load torque. Now let me redraw this diagram again, this torque speed characteristics, to understand the stable operation of a given machine. So we have this type of characteristics. So suppose that we have, this is the rated torque point, this is the torque rated, and here we have the starting torque, this is the pull out torque, this is an M, and here we have the induced torque here. Now suppose that the motor is operating at this point number 1. Let us say that the motor is operating here at this point number 1, and due to certain reasons it moves to this point number 2, right? Due to certain disturbance in the machine, the motor operating point shifts to this point number 2. Now what is happening here right now? You see that at this point number 1 we have N1, which is the speed of the motor. As the motor reaches this point number 2, we have this N2. Notice here that due to the shift in the motor operating point, this N1, the new speed N2 is less than the speed which is this N1. So what will happen? We need to see on the other side as well that the torque which was available on the point number 1 is now less than the torque which is applied on the point number 2. So the motor was operating at this point number 1 with the speed N1, and the torque T1, which is this one, it then moves to this point number 2. Here we have this torque which is T2. So this T2 is greater than the torque which is more than the torque available at this point number 1. So what will happen? Because this torque induced has increased, so the motor will actually speed up and it will move back to this point number 1, and therefore this region where the motor torque and the speed, they both complement each other such that the motor comes back to the original point even if there is some disturbance in its performance. This region is known as the stable region of the motor. So this stable region we have starting from this particular point, this all of this is set as the stable region of a given induction motor. So let me write down here for the stable region. Let us say that at point 1, N1 is the speed and T1 is the torque. Motor moves to point 2 because of some disturbance or small signal variation. It moves on to point number 2. Then at point number 2, N2 and T2 are the two quantities which are available, right? Now if we examine here, this N2 is less than this N1, whereas this T2 is greater than this T1. So what will happen? Since the torque is high, so the motor will speed up. As the motor will speed up, it will travel across this particular line downwards till it will reach the rated value, which was the original speed and the original torque of the machine. So the motor comes back to the original operating point despite the disturbance, and therefore this whole region is called as a stable region, right? If the motor, instead of going upwards to this point 2, let us say the motor comes back to this point number 3. Now at this point number 3, you see, if it moves to this point number 3, then we have N3 greater than this N1, right? However, at this particular point, this T3 is less than this torque 1. So what will happen? The motor has a torque which is less than the torque which was previously available. However, the speed of the motor is high, so it will increase the torque and it will come back to this particular point number 1. So therefore, this region of the torque speed characteristics of an induction motor is known as the stable region. Let us see what happens on this particular region, which is known as an unstable region. Let us see why we call this as an unstable region. Now suppose that we are operating at this point number 4, right? This is the point number 4, and consequently we have this omega 4, and here we have the torque, which is this T4. Now if we have some disturbance in the scheme, then this point number 4, let us say that it moves to this point number 5. At this point number 5, we have this omega 5 and we have this tau 5. Now for this point number 5, the speed N5 is greater than this is this N4, and also we have this torque which is available at this point number 5. It is greater than this tau 4. So what will happen? The motor will move away from the original point, which is point number 4, and it will move to this point number 6. It will increase its speed, and in this particular region, the increment in the speed is followed by an increment in this torque induced, right? You see here, this way we are increasing the speed, and also we are increasing the induced torque or the torque which is developed in the motor. So what will happen then? The motor will again accelerate and it will move further from this point number 4, and therefore, because the motor is not coming back to this point number 4, this region is not a stable region. Similarly, if we say that we have another point here, if the motor comes from this point number 4 to this point number 7, what will happen? Here we have the speed which is N7, and we have the torque which is tau 7. The N7 is less than the N4, and also we have the tau 7 which is less than the tau 4. So what will happen? The motor will move here and eventually it will stop at this particular point. So this whole region is not a stable region of operation for an induction motor, right? Now the question is that whether or not we can operate a motor in this unstable region. To understand that this particular aspect, we need to again see the rotor circuit or the rotor part of the equivalent circuit. So remember that we have this type of a this is Jx2 and this is R2 over S, right. In this particular region, here we have slip equal to 0 and here we have slip equal to 1, right. So if we are operating a motor for a substantially prolonged period of time, this means that even if this operating point is not moving, and we are very happy operating the motor at this particular instant of time, at this instant of the IV characteristics, this means that we are operating in a high slip region. Remember that this slip 3 is a high slip region, which means that the R2 over S is low in region number 3. So in region number 3, this R2 over S is quite low, which means that the current which is flowing into the rotor is high, right. So consequently what happen is, the rotor circuit will draw high amount of current, and therefore it is not recommended to operate the motor for a prolonged period of time in this unstable region, right. So we can have a motor operating at this particular unstable region for a brief moment of time, but because of the rotor circuit which will continuously draw the high amount of current, it is not possible to operate the machine at this unstable region for an elongated or a prolonged period. So that's all for the top speed characteristics of the machine here.